Hello. Today we're going to be analyzing the nonfiction piece from Harper's Magazine by Ben Lerner called Contest of Words. Ben Lerner, a known poet, gives a background of his own experience in high school speech and debate, while giving a clear parallel between that and current American political discourse. Ben Lerner gives an interesting conversation, oftentimes using funny stories as well as serious moments in American history where we've seen a digression of language altogether. When looking towards Ben Lerner's emphasis on things, we need to first see his thesis, where he states their linguistic world is that of anti-extemp, where failures in fluency are marks of authenticity, ignorance is often a point of pride, and tautology supplants cognition. This is Lerner basically critiquing the way that current American political discourse is antithetical to how speech and debate works in high school, where oftentimes argumentation comes first and sincerity is needed, even going to the point where the National Speech and Debate Association wrote many articles encouraging authenticity and giving the why, trying to create the best students and the best citizens in the United States. But oftentimes, Ben Lerner also has his own critiques of how high school speech and debate works. First, in the beginning of his article, by having a more cynical and sarcastic tone when talking about his own experience in speech and debate. Oftentimes exposing speech and debate to giving a comparison of cult-like ecstasy, where public speaking seemed to be on the back burner. When he competed in policy debate, a thing called spreading, where one would speak at a rapidly fast pace, was put at the forefront rather than the means of eloquent discussion. However, by the end of the article, we see Lerner's more sympathetic side, where he discusses how he thinks that there is a chance if we demand for proper speech that we can have better discourse and actually make change happen. Now, while Lerner does give a different perspective to this, we need to see how it impacts his presentation. By being a poet, it is interesting to see how his storytelling arc portrays a different perspective on how to look at American politics, as well as his own stories as a high schooler. But oftentimes, he even gives an interesting focus on things. As the Poetry Foundation stated, quote, Lerner's work often uses scientific structures to explore the relationship between language, form, and movement. Because Lerner is able to use this poetic style and apply it to his memoir, it gives a different perspective for me as well as many others when looking at his own analysis. Now for me, when reading this, I had my own background in speech and debate to consider, that I competed for 4 years in both speech and debate, and many of these events that Lerner talks about specifically, I felt like I could completely relate, where oftentimes I felt the need to give more clear than complex answers and not actually talk about the facts themselves. This eloquence or even trying to smooth over issues that we see in today's society also relates to how American discourse functions today. But I was even more so able to be impacted by questioning this often assumption that many high schoolers have when they come at speech and debate, that we have some type of universal impact. And by simply comparing these events, we need to understand they're still in a very isolated environment. Noticing now it's even a similar compartmentalization that we see in political discourse today. So, while I was able to get a different perspective through Lerner, I was able to find that Lerner's context works very much in alignment with many of the articles I was able to look at. And overall, his ability to be a poet and still give interesting analysis on political discourse in America gave him a better upper-hand in trying to convince me, as well as any other reader or audience, how we can see the difference of political discourse in the educational form and in the public form.